Book 1, Chapter 1, Part 2 of This Side of Paradise. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. This recording is by Mark Smith of Simpsonville, South Carolina. This Side of Paradise by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Book 1, Chapter 1, Part 2. Snapshots of the Young Egotist. Amory spent nearly 2 years in Minneapolis. The first winter he wore moccasins that were born yellow, but after many applications of oil and dirt assumed their mature color, a dirty greenish brown. He wore a gray plaid Mackinaw coat and a red toboggan cap. His dog, Count Del Monte, ate the red cap, so his uncle gave him a gray one that pulled down over his face. The trouble with this one was that you breathed into it and your breath froze. One day the darn thing froze his cheek. He rubbed snow on his cheek, but it turned bluish-black just the same. The Count Del Monte ate a box of bluing once, but it didn't hurt him. Later, however, he lost his mind and ran madly up the street, bumping into fences, rolling in gutters, and pursuing his eccentric course out of Amory's life. Amory cried on his bed. "Poor little Count!" he cried. "Oh, poor little Count!" After several months he suspected Count of a fine piece of emotional acting. Amory and Frog Parker considered that the greatest line in literature occurred in Act III of Arsène Lupin. They sat in the first row at the Wednesday and Saturday matinees. The line was, "If one can't be a great artist or a great soldier, the next best thing is to be a great criminal." Amory fell in love again and wrote a poem. This was it: "Marilyn and Sally, those are the girls for me. Marilyn stands above Sally in that sweet, deep love." He was interested in whether McGovern of Minnesota would make the first or second All-American, how to do the card pass, how to do the coin pass, chameleon ties, how babies were born, and whether Three-Fingered Brown was really a better pitcher than Christy Mathewson. Among other things he read For the Honor of the School, Little Women twice, The Common Law, Sappho, Dangerous Dan McGrew, The Broad Highway 3 times, The Fall of the House of Usher, 3 Weeks, Mary Ware the Little Colonel's Chum, Gunga Din, The Police Gazette, and Jim Jam Jems. He had all the Henty biases in history, and was particularly fond of the cheerful murder stories of Mary Roberts Rinehart. School ruined his French and gave him a distaste for standard authors. His masters considered him idle, unreliable, and superficially clever. He collected locks of hair from many girls. He wore the rings of several. Finally he could borrow no more rings, owing to his nervous habit of chewing them out of shape. This, it seemed, usually aroused the jealous suspicions of the next borrower. All through the summer months Amory and Frog Parker went each week to the stock company. Afterward they would stroll home in the balmy air of August night, dreaming along Hennepin and Nicollet avenues, through the gay crowd. Amory wondered whether people could fail to notice that he was a boy marked for glory, and when faces of the throng turned toward him and ambiguous eyes stared into his, he assumed the most romantic of expressions and walked on the air cushions that lie on the asphalts of 14. Always, after he was in bed, there were voices, indefinite, fading, enchanting, just outside his window, and before he fell asleep he would dream one of his favorite waking dreams, the one about becoming a great half-back, or the one about the Japanese invasion when he was rewarded by being made the youngest general in the world. It was always the becoming he dreamed of, never the being. This, too, was quite characteristic of Amory. Code of the Young Egotist. Before he was summoned back to Lake Geneva, he had appeared shy but inwardly glowing, in his first long trousers, set off by a purple accordion tie and a Belmont collar with the edges unassailably meeting, purple socks, and handkerchief with a purple border peeping from his breast pocket. But more than that, he had formulated his first philosophy, a code to live by, which, as nearly as it can be named, was a sort of aristocratic egotism. He had realized that his best interests were bound up with those of a certain variant, changing person, whose label, in order that his past might always be identified with him, was Amory Blaine. Amory marked himself a fortunate youth, capable of infinite expansion for good or evil. He did not consider himself a strong character, but relied on his facility, learn things sort of quick, and his superior mentality, read a lot of deep books. He was proud of the fact that he could never become a mechanical or scientific genius. From no other heights was he debarred. Physically, Amory thought he was exceedingly handsome. He was. He fancied himself an athlete of possibilities and a supple dancer. Socially, here his condition was, perhaps, most dangerous. He granted himself personality, charm, magnetism, poise, the power of dominating all contemporary males, the gift of fascinating all women. Mentally, complete, unquestioned superiority. Now a confession will have to be made. Amory had rather a Puritan conscience. Not that he yielded to it. Later in life he almost completely slew it. But at 15 it made him consider himself a great deal worse than other boys. Unscrupulousness, the desire to influence people in almost every way, even for evil, a certain coldness and lack of affection, amounting sometimes to cruelty, a shifting sense of honor, an unholy selfishness, a puzzled, furtive interest in everything concerning sex. There was also a curious strain of weakness running crosswise through his make-up. A harsh phrase from the lips of an older boy older boys usually detested him was liable to sweep him off his poise into surly sensitiveness or timid stupidity. He was a slave to his own moods, and he felt that though he was capable of recklessness and audacity, he possessed neither courage, perseverance, nor self-respect. Vanity, tempered with self-suspicion if not self-knowledge, a sense of people as automatons to his will, a desire to pass as many boys as possible and get to a vague top of the world, with this background did Amory drift into adolescence. Preparatory to the great adventure. The train slowed up with midsummer languor at Lake Geneva, and Amory caught sight of his mother waiting in her electric on the gravelled station drive. It was an ancient electric, one of the early types, and painted gray. The sight of her sitting there, slenderly erect, and of her face, where beauty and dignity combined, melting to a dreamy, recollected smile, filled him with a sudden great pride of her. As they kissed coolly and he stepped into the electric, he felt a quick fear lest he had lost the requisite charm to measure up to her. "Dear boy, you're so tall. Look behind to see if there's anything coming." She looked left and right. She slipped cautiously into a speed of 2 miles an hour, beseeching Amory to act as sentinel, and at one busy crossing she made him get out and run ahead to signal her forward like a traffic policeman. Beatrice was what might be termed a careful driver. "You are tall, but you're still very handsome. You've skipped the awkward age. Or is that 16? Perhaps it's 14 or 15. I can never remember, but you've skipped it." "Don't embarrass me," murmured Amory. "But, my dear boy, what odd clothes! They look as if they were a set, don't they? Is your underwear purple, too?" Amory grunted impolitely. "You must go to Brooks's and get some really nice suits. Oh, we'll have a talk to-night, or perhaps to-morrow night. I want to tell you about your heart. You've probably been neglecting your heart, and you don't know